think that's a very good
They
question.
don't have any roads,
Right.
no industry.
You probably know this being a veteran and what have you, but the Soviet Union was there in the 70s
They
and 80s.
kicked their butt, didn't they?
Look what happened to them. The British were there at the time, and they paid a tremendous price for being in Afghanistan. So now, as I say, we're betwixt and between. We now have one general out, a new general in. Okay, what's his mission going to be? What are we trying to do? Because I'm told, or I read, that Al-Qaeda has basically spread to the four winds. In fact, most of them are now in Pakistan and not in Afghanistan. But we're now trying to protect the Karzai government from the Taliban, who were there before. And, you know, at some point, the United States can't do all that work. At some point, the Afghanis are going to have to be responsible for protecting themselves if this is the government they want. But by the same token, we've made this investment and this commitment. If we turn tail and run, not only have we squandered all the money, but we've squandered, I think, the sacrifice of the lives of the men and women who've been there. So we need to say, all right, you got a job, General Petraeus. You better get in there. You better train these Afghani forces, and we better get out of there as quickly as we can, because it's endless.
It took me 4 months in the Marine Corps. 4 months, and I was trained in combat.
Yep. Let me just go to the back, and then I'll come over here.
Yeah, just could you contrast yourself with both your fellow Republican candidates for Congress, as well as one of your Republican predecessors, Joe Nolenberg?
Certainly, I'm glad to. Let's start with Joe Nolenberg, who is a good friend, a dear friend, someone who I've known personally for going on 30 years. My position is a little bit more aggressive than Joe. I tend to believe that the government needs to use this opportunity, this time, this crisis, if you will, to tackle the spending issues, which are, I think, paramount. I think Joe worked at a time that was a little different than the circumstances we have today. When I left his office in 2002, the federal government was still on a balanced budget, or pretty close to it. The Iraq situation had just started, and of course 9/11. And I think, frankly, Republicans found themselves going in the wrong direction. You know, we had something called compassionate conservatism. Well, we all like to think that we're compassionate, but if the standard for that is how much money can you spend, I think it takes us down the wrong path. So I believe that I'm much more aggressive in terms of reducing the size, the scope, and the spending of the federal government. That is our primary distinction in many ways. But I will tell you this about Joe, and you'll never meet a more decent human being. He is someone who I have the greatest respect for, but I think it's a different approach because it's a different time. Now, with regard to the other Republican candidates, there are 4 candidates in the race or for the nomination. One is a woman named Anna Janik. In fact, I had a town hall meeting yesterday, and Anna was there. I gave her an opportunity to speak. She, frankly, I think is trying to make a point that she's involved with some of the Ron Paul organization. And, you know, I think she's added some things to the race, but I don't know that she is a credible, a serious candidate. And I hate to say that because everybody who files is. Another one of the candidates is former Judge Richard Kuhn. Judge Kuhn served on the Oakland County Circuit Bench for a number of years, retired, was forced to retire by the age limit here in the state some years ago, and is into his early 80s now. I'm not sure, honestly, that, you know, that's, I mean, I look at him 51, I know how much this takes out of you. I can only imagine what you would do there, and you do need to have some stamina to get this job done. And I really don't know much about either of their specific policy positions because I really haven't been out there as much. My main opponent is a fellow by the name of Andrew Rocky Rechkowski. And Rocky is running primarily, I think, on his military background. Again, I've offered, suggested, recommended, pleaded to have a series of debates with all these candidates so that you could hear us side by side. I said, let's have 6 debates. I issued this right after the filing deadline. Well, nobody's really been interested. I mean, Anna, I shouldn't say, Anna has said that she would be willing to debate, and I think it's wonderful, but I haven't heard nor seen Judge Kuhn, and not word one from Rocky. And so I don't know what you're trying to do. You've got to get up and stand before the people side by side and make those so that you can make some comparisons. even further, I would say this. You know, look, my business background was one that I built myself. I wasn't handed. He has some business background. He's walking around talking about being the CEO of a company, but he was parachuted in by one of his political supporters to be made as the head of this company. And I don't know too much about this company, but I know it's got a bit of a checkered history, and there's some real questions that have been raised. There's some lawsuits involved that I think are very serious at that company. I can tell you this, my company made a profit every year. Some years were better than others, but it was because we managed it well. We didn't, as I say, spend more than we took in. We knew what we were doing, and we made that business work. Secondly, Rocky talks about his legislative experience. He spent 6 years in the Michigan legislature. Well, I've spent some time up there as well, and I don't mean to disrespect these guys, but I can tell you that's a very different world in Lansing, in the state legislature, from what's happening, the complexities of the issues we face in Congress. And there's no substitute for experience. Having been the guy in the committee rooms, the guy who's had to work with Republicans and Democrats, but primarily with our side, to get things done, as we did, is an experience that is, I think, second to none in terms of qualifications for this position. And so I think that experience, as well as our business experience, and frankly, this doesn't qualify me for the job, but it's part of who I am. I mean, I'm a husband and a father. I've raised a wonderful son who's now 16 and now beginning that process again. And I got to tell you, I think it gives you a very different perspective on the world when you've had to raise children and make sure that those diapers are clean and they're off to school on time and that they're home and you've been to parent-teacher conferences and you see those kind of things. So I'm proud of my background and my experience, and I don't think everybody in the race can match it. As far as the issues go, here again, I have no real knowledge of what my main opponent really is talking about. I mean, I put out a specific detailed plan, and it's on the website. I'd encourage you to go and see it. But, motherhood and apple pie is not a political plan. I mean, you can wear your uniform and wave the flag and all that sort of thing, but it's not going to get it done. And I guess finally what I would say to answer you is that, the Democrats, and Gary Peters in particular, are going to want to make this race not about their record, not about their votes, but about the Republican. They're going to want to say, gee, let's not talk about, what I've done in Washington, let's talk about you. And I tell you, you better be able to stand up to that scrutiny. Your background and your history better be pretty darn good. Because we saw it with Nolenberg. I mean, they were running ads that Joe Nolenberg was against puppies and, the Humane Society and all this kind of thing. So they'll stoop to any level. I say bring it on. I say let's talk about the issues. If you want to look at me, my life's an open book. And that's what I think is necessary in order to win this election, too. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.